Breaking the bias. First and foremost, what exactly is bias is the question before we talk about breaking the bias. Bias is basically, a prejudice against a person or a group of people in a way that can be considered unfair. So when we're talking about breaking the bias as it relates to International Women's Day, we're talking about prejudices against women that are unfair. We're talking about creating awareness for both conscious and unconscious biases that have been detrimental to the growth and development of women. That is what breaking the bias is. Creating awareness for these prejudices, for these biases, and consciously creating an effort to break them. Gender biases in the workplace. I think personally I've been quite fortunate. I haven't experienced a lot of gender biases in the workplace. But let me start around my home. For instance, in my domestic life, I see that play out a lot. For instance, as a female leader, I see that there is always this perception as to she's a female, she shouldn't speak in a certain manner. I'm not saying that one should be rude as a female or as any gender altogether. But there are situations that call for assertiveness with perhaps direct reports, perhaps people that are engaged under you. And sometimes I see that there's this tendency of, permit me to say it in local parlance, especially with male domestics, you see this attitude of Moniru Enle. And basically, what does that mean? That's Yoruba for saying I have someone like you at home. Don't speak to me in a certain way. And these are perfectly normal and acceptable things or methodology of communication that would be very okay if you were coming from a male counterpart. I see that play out a lot in my domestic life. And that bias basically makes people take offense. It should be broken. In terms of the workforce, what you see a lot is that there's a perception that a woman is less capable than a man. Okay, so for instance, if you look at it in terms of strength, physical strength, yes, personally I do agree that in terms of majority, a man's physiology definitely makes them stronger. But that doesn't mean that it also applies to intellectual capacity. In terms of the intellectual capacity, there's no difference between a man and a woman. And so a lot of positions that you see that call for intellectual capacity and soundness, there is this assumption or this bias that a male should be the one in authority, in leadership, or better able to navigate that. That is totally incorrect. Personally, when I'm interviewing someone, I don't look at the person in terms of gender. I look at the person in terms of their ability to be able to execute the responsibilities of that role. And that is, basically what it should be. It's not about whether you are male or you're a female. It's about, do you have the skills? Do you have the requirement? Do you have the knowledge to be able to carry out the functions of this role effectively? Okay, another very common bias is in terms of pay or disparity, so to speak. And I think the bias comes from the angle of a man needs the income more than a woman. So what I mean is basically in a situation, especially in organizations where the pay grade or the salary is not fixed, what you tend to see is that when a woman is occupying the same role as a man, there's a tendency for the woman's pay to be lower than that of the man. This is a bias and it's very wrong. And I think it really stems from the fact that people or the assumption that a man needs that money more than the woman, because a man is responsible for taking care of the home and has so much responsibilities. But I think it is a bias and it definitely needs to be corrected because individual situations differ. What we are seeing a lot more is that women have become the breadwinners, are contributing as much as men in their family lives. So it really shouldn't be based on the gender, the pay grade should be defined simply by the value, by the contribution that the individual, irrespective of gender, is bringing to the organization. This is a very, very important one that needs to be tackled across the country and even globally. We are passionate about inclusion across board, and gender inclusion happens to be a very important area because that's one of the areas where you see the widest disparity. We believe that women are a vital force for growth and development across the world, and we will not reach that equilibrium until women are actually in the place or in the position that they need to take. If you look at the population of the world, it's not just based on men or male. It's distributed across genders, and it should be representative in the different aspects of the life, particularly when it comes to leadership, growth, and empowerment. And so we're very, very passionate about, helping to close this gender disparity. According to World Economic Forum, prior to the pandemic, it was about 100 years that it was estimated before we would be able to reach gender parity. But the COVID pandemic actually set us back a bit, and the prediction is about 136 years before we can get there. So we are very, very passionate about closing the gap. We want to close this gap sooner because, like I said earlier, it is important that we do that for the world to actually reach equilibrium and to reach, advanced stages of development and growth across board. Of course, another area where we see, or the reason why we're also passionate, is that when it comes to insurance in particular, there's still a very, very wide gap. And so you see a lot of sectors where women are not financially included, they are not protected. And so it's very, especially when it comes to the small and medium-sized enterprises, which a lot of women are, blazing the trail now for. So we are very passionate about helping to close this economic gap, which we believe is going to lead to a lot of growth and development, especially in emerging economies. The She for Shield initiative is our women empowerment initiative. It's basically an initiative that is targeted towards helping women to take their place in the society and in leadership and to actualize their goals. A while back, AXA, together with the IFC and Accenture, carried out extensive research, and it was identified that there was still a very wide gap in terms of women being catered for in insurance, particularly in emerging economies. And so part of also the objective of the She for Shield initiative is to work with women to identify the areas, where they need protection, where they need to be included, right, to enable their businesses grow, to enable them actualize their dreams. We want to see women begin to develop businesses that will outlive them. Multi-generational businesses founded by women. For them to be able to do that, the right level of protection is required. So the She for Shield initiative is geared towards, like I said, protection of the women, and also identifying the peculiarities of women and their needs in businesses, and ensuring that it is catered for and they are financially included. Nigerian women, take your place. I think that's a very, very important message that I would like to pass on. We need to take our place, not just by handouts, but by working purposely towards our goals and our objectives. I believe that there is still so much room. It's not based on just allocations or, board sittings. Let's just reserve one for the woman. We need to actually begin to develop the skills that will enable us be recognized and positioned for these places of leadership that we aspire to be. So the training, because we've already established that intellectual capacity is not hindered in any way by gender. So the required trainings, the required positioning, the right networking, using our networks properly, very, very important. Somebody said to me some years ago that, when women gather, basically what they use their network for is just simply for their family, for their children, and for schooling. And that is very important, and that's not to be removed. But also in terms of your career advancement, positioning, and stuff like that that would accelerate you into leadership, we need to enhance that a bit more. We need to be part of it. Women also, you need to be a bit more assertive. You need to speak up and demand your rights. If you feel that you are in an organization where you are being mistreated simply, or being treated unfairly simply because you are a woman, don't expect somebody else to be the one to speak up for you. We need to actually speak up and correct and make that change happen. Also, I want to say that being a leader does not mean that your feminine attributes, you need to forget about it. I remember a couple of years back when I wanted to buy a laptop. I think Apple had just released this rose gold laptop, and then I considered, if I'm going for board meetings, how will I be perceived? All the guys have their black and their silver laptops, and will I look a bit unserious? And I told myself, absolutely not. I mean, it functions exactly the same way. So I went for my rose gold laptop. So it's not really about the color of the laptop or what you're wearing. It is really by ensuring that your intellect and your contributions cannot be ignored. That is a very, very important aspect of leadership and growth. So basically, I would just say to women, take your place, take charge, equip yourself so that when those opportunities arise, you cannot be excluded, you cannot be ignored. Happy International Women's Day. Break the bias.